Hi, Demon Dev here, and today I'm going to do some more talking about writing theory, specifically related to branching. But this is going to be a little bit more of some lessons that I've learned working with branching dialogue that might be applicable even outside of the Electra system. Although, of course, I will mention some of the upsides to my system while I go through it. Anyways, let's go ahead. So, dialogue is here on the screen, and you can see, okay, so here's got a conversation with, let's say, the AI saying hi, and you're about to lead into an ominous conversation where you're asking them something serious. At least that's what you're kind of hinting at with that whole thing. So you can do this many ways. This would be a somewhat linear display of it. And if you were to have different branching choices. Maybe the player has two different options for, instead of saying, hey, can I ask? Maybe they can say, hey, can I ask? Or maybe they can avoid the topic entirely, a completely different branch, and just talk about the weather. Like, oh, it's supposed to be nice all weekend or something like that. Totally separate trees could happen there. Um, and you could represent this in multiple ways. In the past, I spent a lot of time with node-based systems. That's extremely common. It's almost the only way that branching dialogue is organized and displayed to people trying to work at that level. But ultimately, I ended up wondering if maybe node-based displays, or well, yeah, sort of like data visualizations of branching dialogue, going off in different branches, whether that is a good way to display it. So, one thing that ended up appealing to me quite a lot, as you've already seen in a lot of my videos, is just live displaying the conversation as a text chat. I think it's an extremely compressed way to view dialogue in a scrolling manner. It's immediately accessible because everyone has had back and forth text conversations, so there's a lot that you can access about people's experiences, although it may cause you to write the conversation differently, more in that format. So that is a danger. Anyways, one alternative to the like branching nodes, you think standard Unreal Engine blueprints where you're going from one thing to the next, and there's sub properties or nested properties within those, sure. Um, One alternative to the nodes would be actually to just display a bunch of linear um, top to bottom text chat. So imagine if you've ever done Facebook Messenger, but on the desktop site, and you've managed multiple conversations with multiple different people at the same time. It might look something like this. Maybe you've got your entry thing at the bottom for all of them. And that's kind of interesting in the context of branching conversation, because what that allows us to do is manage separate dimensions in a relatively intuitive way. I mean, in some cases with Facebook, maybe if you had multiple tabs or something like that, you would be able to carry on multiple conversations with the same person or similar people, whether it be political debates or all sorts of fun mischief. At the same time, and it would kind of feel similar to this. And there's a lot of advantages to having something like this as let me zoom out a bit, as a way of comparing, contrasting information. So one thing that I've gotten here is a premise difference. So one way that you could interact with branching dialogue, instead of being like, okay, well, this branch that goes talking about the weather is over here, this branch that goes talking about the relationships is over here, or let's be a little bit more focused. Let's just say specifically within asking her for a serious conversation or asking her out or something like that, that whole thing. Let's focus on just variants of only that conversation. So a relatively small spread of branching, but high stakes. So right here, I've got the premise. So this is, based on the Electra system. So probably makes sense to flip these, but essentially we've got three premises for the bond value of the relationship. So here's how the conversation would go, assuming all the exact same player options. if your bond is at a 6, here's how the conversation would go if it's lower than a 3, and here's a conversation if the player makes all the same options, if it's in that middle range. So in this way, you can create separate premises and view them at the same time, and as a writer, really feel the meaningful differences, and you can continue to write down. Um, this is a speculative feature. So this, oops, right now this exists. We're previewing this real quick. Yeah, I can jump back and forth. Right now, we're previewing this. There we go. Right now, we're previewing this, the active conversation. But what if I want to preview multiple variants at the same time? That would be extremely useful to compare exactly step for step how a conversation goes. The only way, and I've seen this be the same way with node-based conversation systems or really any alternate system. Usually, the only way you can preview them is to step back and forth, change your option, and then try to remember what you did do. Having an option display things like this should be much more intuitive because again, you can see, okay, when the bond is really low, then this option doesn't happen. Or when the bond is in the middle range, this option is not there, but her reaction is the same. Or, stuff like that. You can manage it much more intuitively than trying to jump around on a node tree, because the problem with and those are an incredibly useful data visualization structure. The problem with nodes is that the spatial position of the nodes means nothing. Even if you commit yourself to a disciplined attitude, like, okay, in the big scale, if I branch, downwards to here, these are romance options. If I'm branching over here, these are talking about the day. If I branch over here, we're having a conflict of some kind. Even if you commit to spatial organization, which is a bit of a chore, and I don't see many people effectively disciplining themselves in that way. Even if you do that, you zoom out and you see a tree, all you know is that the conversation can go many ways. You don't know the nuances of those conversations. And usually that's only helping you understand that there are differences in the large view and the macro big scale effect. The micro, these micro expressions and how they can affect the conversation, the AI's reactions and stuff. You can examine all these nuances here, and you can change the layer. And you can swap out these parameters with any parameters or any set of parameters. One thing that I think would also be really useful as a time-saving tool and a way to keep your writer focused on what they want to write. Maybe they're focusing on the AI. They really don't want to have to switch into the mindset of the player and think how they would think. So maybe you can automate that because of this microsystem. You can say, okay, this is going to be a player a player who is trying to get this girl to go out with them or some sort of romantic advance. This might be a friendship player. Maybe they just want to be nice, and so they're choosing expressions that suit that goal. So they're trying to maximize their bond. And then the other one, it might just be chaotic expression. So they're just choosing options that are funny. This would be easy. You could just say, oh, prioritize choosing options that are funny or mean, or what's the other good one? Confident ones are usually usually fun. As far as being more divisive and wild. And then maybe you could you might need a random, as much as I hate randomness, you might need a random seed if you're going to simulate unstable player behavior. But anyways, you can simulate all these. And so these would not be differing based on the bond. They'd be differing based on the player expressions. So maybe a player is choosing a flirty option here. And just imagine that they're rewritten differently. This might be more of a kind option, and this might be more of a provocative or accusatory statement. And then you can see how they play out, and you can write all the conversations at the same time. Maybe I'll add something, probably I'll add something that allows you to just kind of grab, copy, and paste um, conversation chunks, but it will be a non-reference copy paste. I think it's really important to maintain all these separate conversations. They'll be organized in a very simple way, which is that there are three premises, and as a writer you should stay, in my opinion, for branching narrative, because you're trying to make a rich experience before you're trying to make it dynamic, in my opinion. A good story once before a bad story thrice, something like that. um you're specifically focusing on three separate reality dimensions or whatever, and obviously there's many different variables that exist between them or outside of them, like outliers, um, on the spectrum. So where it makes sense to make four or five premises, or maybe really there's only one there's only one premise. This conversation can only go one way. Who knows? You have to decide that on a case by case basis, I think, as a writer. But that is a manageable organization set. So then instead of looking at this crazy node based structure, you're just looking at, okay, here's a conversation that, based on a couple keyframes, and that's how I think it should be looked at. Maybe there's three premise keyframes, and those conversations go this way, again with all the usual electro variants, which is significant but manageably contained within the what seems like a single linear branching structure, even though it kind of nests in its own branching. So anyways, one way to look at it would be kind of like this. You've got, this represents all possible variants of this conversation across all premises and across all player expressions. Fun. And those can take in all sorts of environmental or player choice based factors. What is the relationship? Is the bond at a 0 or a 10? Same thing with the respect, 0 or 10, anywhere on that scale. The sexual tension is a more dynamic attribute that allows the player to strategically plan out a romantic advance if they want to do that, or to avoid one. If you don't want a girl who's really into you to make a play for kissing you, then you better make sure that the group setting always has more than one person. More than one person meaning more than the person that's trying to get with you in the game. Same thing with the physical proximity. If you want to make an advance, one way would be to ask her out directly. Another way would be to be physically close and see if you can go for a handhold, whether that's an opportunity. And a handhold could be a premise or a variant of the conversation. And so then you've got these, right. So the different premise conversations, that you could think of these as three different premises, and you can compare and contrast these premises. You can take the different variables, and the difference between these variables, these huge sets of variables, could inspire new premises. I think that we should orient towards not infinite variations, but hand chosen, handcrafted variations. So one variation of a conversation is you being rejected. Another variant of the conversation could be accepted. But if you compare and contrast all those variables, you might find that there's a place for a dysfunctional fling. So maybe she's attracted to you, but really doesn't like you as a person. That's possible with the bond respect situation, with the bond respect relationship variables. So maybe that results in a dysfunctional fling, assuming the player wants that and the conditions are right for the AI character to want that. Maybe sexual tension is very high, and one or both people end up regretting the decision and having a conversation or just avoiding each other afterwards, which is a very realistic thing. And I think fun to have that possibility and that experience and those conversations. Another possibility could be more of a gaslight reaction, where either the player or the AI character could be, in a sense, leading the person on. I think that gets over accused of people, but sometimes people are just genuinely on the fence and they don't want to have to admit that they did entertain some feelings. Sometimes there's somebody that's into you and they flirt with you a lot, even, hand holding or kissing, and then they change their mind. And it's too painful to reject you to begin with, let alone explain that they can't make up their mind, but they're sure that they don't want to encourage you anymore. There's many functional and dysfunctional ways to handle that as well. So that could be a timeline in which she's telling you she's not into you and that you were wrong for interpreting any of her actions in that direction. And it could go the opposite way too. Um, I would not advise such a strategy in real life, but because it exists and because it can be simulated with the system, I think that it should be considered to be in there because it can be a powerful conversation, and it can have fascinating impacts on the social situation. In some cases, you may be in such a desperate scenario or with such an abusive person that the right course of action is not to be completely honest with them about whatever happened romantically. Sometimes you are very attracted to someone and it turns out they have, red flags, some serious red flags, and you notice this may be abusive behavior towards you, and that becomes a deal breaker, and you are trying to find a way to get out of that situation. And I think that's something that you don't typically see in games. It's a complex thing, and I don't know for sure if I'd be able to pull something like that off. But with these systems, you can begin to see how you could organize and approach the level of complexity and depth with relationships and conversations and exclusionary conversations. This happens instead of this because of these easy to understand, intuitive premise variables that you hard set. And again, I think it's possible. Don't want to over promise anything. I think it's possible to compare, all these different premises, see which variables are the same, which variables are different, and eventually arrive at so many keyframe points and so many different directions of keyframe points, you know, and so many different directions of keyframe points that you're able to bridge all gaps, and it will, essentially snap between two keyframes, but the gaps between keyframes as far as the different, essentially conversations or events or relationship dynamics are covered. Now, I don't even know if that's an ideal goal, but again, because you can rationally accept that that could be possible, that means that that degree of detail could be possible in a really important scenario. So maybe you want to pour in lots of writers' content or a whole community collaboration on a really important event or timeline progression of events with a certain relationship, character, or even groups. You could do something like this to be like, man, I don't know what's halfway between starting a war and halfway between an arranged marriage. But if we keep picking out keyframes between it, we're building an incredibly rich, detailed, and truly interactive, like, as far as dynamic decision making can go, story and enough keyframes, and you've got a really beautiful progression. I don't think you need complete, frame by frame keyframes. I think you can not just get away with, but I think it's superior to have um, intentional, set points of what can happen instead of just smooth gradations everywhere. But that kind of respect for the variables of the situation and respect for the player's choices, I think, is something that we will realize is unprecedented until I or someone else, with something like this, does a story or a game, something like this. So, anyways, some exciting stuff. As you can tell, I'm in a drawing app, not in a Unity tool. So there's a lot of features yet to create, but I am really far along, and I do reasonably think that a lot of this can and will be added without too much more effort past what's already there, and which has been a significant, 5-year time investment, but still hungry for more. All right. I'll talk to you guys again soon.